listening to the best of the Martha Zoller Show. To hear the full show each day, tune in to AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN or log in to accesswdun.com and click the Listen Live button from 9 to 11 Monday through Friday. It is the Martha Zoller Show, and joining me right now is Newt Gingrich. I think this is probably the best speech. the president has ever made on foreign policy. And I welcome back to the program, Newt, because he's the reason why I'm a Republican. I lived in his district back in the 80s and listened to his speeches and decided that's what I was. So welcome, Newt. How are you?
I'm doing great, and I agree with you. I've written widely at Gingrich 360 that this is a speech everyone should read. It's his speech in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, was an astonishing, historic explanation of what we had done wrong, which had cost us thousands of young men and women, tens of thousands of wounded, trillions of dollars, trying to export American values and not recognizing that ultimately people have to come to freedom and self-government and democracy on their own terms, not as dictated to them by various, college professors and State Department officials and what have you. And it's a brilliant speech. It was extraordinarily well received, and he really has been on sort of a triumphal tour. The response he got in Saudi Arabia, starting with the 6 Saudi Air Force planes, all of them American, by the way, who escorted Air Force One into Riyadh, and then the 8 planes, all of them American, which escorted Air Force One into Qatar, Doha. And, everywhere he's gone so far, he has made deals that will lead to hundreds of thousands of American jobs. He has tightened our relationship with these countries, and it's really a remarkable achievement.
It really is, and it did take into consideration, especially building on what he did with the Abraham Accords in his last term, which I think is going to grow, that there is an opportunity, even with the message towards Iran. He did not capitulate. What he said was, if you want to have a bigger, better life, if you want to have a better life, we want to partner with you. But if you continue to fund terrorism, we're going to be your worst nightmare.
Yeah, and apparently there are reports today that the Iranians are actually coming around and seeking an agreement with the president. And if that does happen, it will be quite a remarkable achievement.
So, and he also did this without damaging our relationship with Israel, because we've gotten one of the last American hostage out, or the last living American hostage out this week. Steve Witkoff is doing a fantastic job with all of that, getting hostages home from around the world. And, there was a lot of talk at the beginning of the week that, there's this problem with America and Israel. No, there's not. We're maintaining that relationship, and we're building. And eventually, I think you're going to see the Arab countries realize they've got to work with Israel.
Well, I think you're seeing that step by step. When they did the Abraham Accord, they began to line up Bahrain, for example, the United Arab Emirates, Morocco, which expanded on the peace treaties with Jordan and Egypt. And the president's been very clear, both in his speech in Saudi Arabia, in his meeting with the new president of Syria, which I think, by the way, was in many ways the most remarkable event of the whole trip. He said over and over again that they need to join the Abraham Accords and they need to be part of a peace process. And I think he's quite sincere in this approach, and I think that it's beginning to have an impact.
So coming back closer to home, I talked to a congressman this morning who said they've got the work done they need to do to get the big, beautiful bill, and they've got no tax on tips. They've got no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security. People like Chip Roy are towing the line, saying he's getting what he wants in this. There's some Medicaid reforms, not taking anybody off the rolls, but Medicaid reforms. And Ro Khanna got up and said he's going to introduce the bill to codify the president's pharmaceutical executive order, and he's a Democrat. And so are we seeing, I know there's only a few Democrats out there that are speaking about working with Trump on the things they can work with him on, but it seems like we're seeing a shift. It's still a tight margin, but it feels like there's a shift happening out there.
Well, I mean, President Trump is following Reagan's playbook. If you offer things that are wildly popular, I just talked to a friend of ours who takes care of us at a little restaurant that we go to regularly, and he said he'd actually paid enough attention. He said, the eliminating the tax on tips only goes through 28. I said, yeah, but it's a presidential election year, and they'll extend it in 28. But he actually was paying that close attention. And I think people have to realize that whether it's the taxes on Social Security, which are being eliminated, the taxes to create new factories, the child tax credit, there is a ton of stuff there that is going to be very, very popular.
And we've got to stop talking about these as new tax cuts. They're not new. Well, the tax on tips is, or getting rid of that. But the rates we've been paying since 2018. These are the rates that the average 20 to 30-year-old has been paying their whole working life. And we've got to make sure that those rates get extended.
I think that's right. And I think they're going to get extended. And that's part of the magic of what's going on right now. I mean, you're seeing an enormous break in the right direction as people begin to realize that what Trump is doing is going to be very popular, and it is going to give him an opportunity, I think, to really begin to reach into Democrats and into people who realize that they don't want to be the last folks out there who stand for not getting things done.
Absolutely. Were you surprised that China came to the table so quickly? I kind of thought India was going to be a deal we'd get before the Chinese deal. And granted, it's not completed, but it's to the point where they're really working with us.
Well, I do think we're going to see a deal with India pretty rapidly. But I think equally important, what you're seeing develop right now is the Chinese, I think, looked at how much Trump's aggressiveness was costing their economy and how dangerous that was in terms of popular unrest and people who felt that the system had failed them. And I think they felt they almost had no choice, that they had to find some way to deal with all this.
So you and your wife spent some time at the Vatican because, of course, Callista was the ambassador to the Vatican during the last Trump administration. What were your thoughts about what's happened over the last few weeks there?
Well, first of all, she was very close to Pope Francis, knew him, and had spent a good bit of time with him. So it was very, very sad, and she went to the funeral, and it was sort of like the loss of an old friend. I was, like virtually everybody, I was really surprised that Leo XIV, who's an American, was chosen. We'd always assumed that because America is so powerful that you would never quite get an American Pope. Because it just represented so much power going into the same place. But in fact, what has happened is partly because he'd spent, I think, 20 years or 30 years in Peru.
Yeah.
But he was an Augustinian from Chicago. He had been assigned to Chicago in the last decade. Had been brought back by the Pope and made in charge of the dicastery for bishops. So he was dealing with every single bishop on the planet, and therefore was very widely known. But to have him get elected on the second day, on the very fourth ballot, that was an amazing thing. And I think so far he's performed really well. And I really recommend to people to go back and look at Leo XIII, who's the great modernizer of the Catholic Church's response to industrialization. And when you do that, you'll have a better understanding of why you have in Leo XIV, why he chose that name and the signal he's sending about what he hopes will happen.
Well, and the Vatican has some financial problems too, of course. And what I've surmised and what I've heard is that he's not only going to be traditional in a lot of views, he's going to be liberal where priests are always liberal. When you talk about the poor and you talk about immigration, they're always liberal about that. But he seems like he's got the background to be able to help get them back on the right track financially.
I think that was part of it, and frankly, the largest single source of financial support for the Catholic Church is the United States. So
right.
if you're going to try to solve the problems of finance, having the Americans on your side is an enormous advantage.
So one final question about Doge and Elon Musk. It's, I think that he has done a fantastic service to this country. If only the only things that come through are the modernizing of the systems to where we know where the money's going, it will have been worth it. He's paid a high price, Elon Musk, for what he's done. What are your thoughts about Doge and what the future of it is?
Well, I think that it will continue to move forward because, for one thing, it surfaced ways that money were being spent that just shocked people.
Yes.
I mean, nobody knew how bad some of this stuff was. So I think you have to recognize that Doge has already done it. Now, Elon overpromised and underdelivered because it turned out that it's a lot more complicated than he thought. And,
that's right.
But he is a genius. He has revolutionized going into space. I mean, it's amazing what he has accomplished in his career. And I think it's a great asset to America to have somebody who's that smart and who's willing to risk the financial beating he's taken in order to help his country. I mean, I think that speaks very well of him.
Absolutely. It's funny because, I spent a number of years working for both Senator Perdue and helping him get elected the first time and then working for Governor Kemp. And what I always tell people is it was even worse than I thought it was once I got on the inside where I could see how things were being done. And I think that's what happened to Elon Musk because he thought it was going to be pretty easy. Oh, yeah, $4 billion a day and then we'll get $1 trillion and all this. But I think the changes in the systems, Newt, are going to just help us forever. My husband and I own a small nursing business, and we had a little IRS problem, and we had to go in a meeting in our local office a couple of years ago. They gave us printouts that came from a dot matrix printer, Newt. Remember the printers where you tear the paper off the side?
Yep.
I was like, I can't believe this. So I just think modernizing the systems are going to be the record. It'll be the record of what he did.
Well, and I think it will be permanent, and I think it will have a huge long-term impact.
Absolutely. Newt Gingrich, thank you so much for being with us today. We'll talk to you again soon.
Take care.
Putting the talk in News Talk. It's the Martha Zoller Show on AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN.
Joining me right now is Stephanie Zanker, who is with the Libre Initiative, and we're going to talk a little bit about that and bring it a little closer to home. Stephanie, how are you?
Hi, Martha. I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on.
So tell us about the Libre Initiative.
Sure. So the Libre Initiative is a national nonpartisan nonprofit organization, and we work to empower the Latino community to prosper so that they can achieve their American dream. And we have chapters across 13 states, and I am the strategic director of Libre here in Georgia. So we work primarily to connect Latinos to policies that align with their values and teach them about the principle of freedom so that they can thrive and achieve their American dream, which is the reason that most of us come here. We also help give them an understanding about how certain policies and principles actually lead to greater prosperity for their families and businesses. And we do this in a variety of different ways. We have English classes, civics classes, entrepreneurship classes, and we also do issue-based advocacy to connect them to the policies that we're working on and connect them with their communities and local government. And just one of the things that I particularly love doing is showing them how easy it is to get involved with local government. Earlier this year, I took a group of Latinos to the Capitol, and they were just absolutely in shock and awe at how easy it was to go there. And it's really as simple as calling or emailing your rep and introducing yourself as one of their constituents. And so I've experienced firsthand the need for this kind of education in the Latino community.
So tell us your story. How did you get involved in this?
So I am Latina myself. My mom's family is from Guatemala, and I grew up deeply embedded within the Latino community in Virginia, which is where I grew up. And so, I had exposure with the community, and I grew up here. I was born here, and I grew up here. So I'm first generation American, and I actually have an interesting background. I was primarily in the music industry as a touring heavy metal drummer, and then a very serendipitous offer from a friend allowed me to start working on some congressional campaigns up in Maryland where I was living at the time. And I just realized that, standing up for my values and educating the Latino community was one of my passions. And then I found this position, and Libre just connected with what I truly feel about, the need in terms of educating Latinos and helping them succeed, just like my mom did.
I've always had this theory about why the Latino community kind of assimilates so seamlessly into American culture. And here's my theory, okay? You can tell me if it's right or wrong, is that
all right.
Americans are all different kinds of people. They're from white to black and everything in between, but we're united by one language, English. Latinos are the same way. They are everything from white to black, everything in between, but they're united by one language, Spanish. And so because of that, there's already this foundation of kind of understanding how to work hard, how to be involved in the community, the family part of it. But I think that the kind of core of it, I've always thought, is this similarity between the fact we are out of many one, and it's kind of the same thing within the Latino community.
Absolutely. I mean, you hit the nail on the head and talked about something that a lot of people just don't know. The Latino community isn't a monolith. We are, come from many different countries and are, different colors and backgrounds. And, first and foremost, Latinos value family, God, and faith. Those are the strongest motivators. But they come here to America to work hard. And, they value the freedom to achieve their American dream. And, I find that these values tend to align more with traditional conservative values. And a lot of times they're just missing that educational piece. But, another thing that I like to talk about that people don't know is that 70% of Hispanics in the country are U.S. born. And they want, safe communities just like everyone else. And they're going on second, third, fourth generation. So even though they have their Latino culture, they still identify as Americans first.
I think that was the single biggest mistake that was made by the other side, was the assumption. I mean, obviously you can't vote unless you're an United States citizen. I mean, there are a few places in municipalities where they allow people who aren't citizens to vote in municipal elections. But in federal elections, if you are voting, you are a United States citizen. And especially in the community where people have come here and gone through the hoops and valleys to become a United States citizen. My grandmother did that. They are very serious about other people following the rules. Okay. And,
yeah.
Because it was hard for them. It wasn't easy. It was worth it. Okay, but it wasn't easy. And I think the biggest misconception and underestimating that the other side did was that somehow that the Latino community was going to be okay with the rampant illegal immigration. And I always say this, where the United States of America immigrates 1.1 million people a year legally, which is more than the rest of the world combined. So by no definition can you say that America is anti-immigrant. But it doesn't matter where you come from, doesn't matter how you got here. If you're letting 2.5 million people more on top of that come in every year, which is an equivalent to 5% of the U.S. population in a 4-year period, that is something people are concerned about. And it doesn't matter if you're black or white or brown, you're going to be concerned about that.
Absolutely. The majority of Latinos want immigration reform. Comprehensive immigration reform, that leads to clear and effective pathways for immigration, but also border security. And like you mentioned, that's one of the things that's been the biggest misconceptions. I mean, and here in Georgia, there are 11% of the Latino population is here in Georgia at over 1 million, and there are 498,000 registered Latino voters. And they really came out in strong numbers this past election cycle and made their voices heard for sure. But Latinos want safer communities just like everybody else. And so, they tend to support, the current administration's policies to remove security threats, national security threats, and criminals.
We're talking to Stephanie Zanker from the Libre Initiative. And of course, in state and federal policy, you guys are worried about regulation. You're worried about the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Tell us a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So here in Georgia, a big priority for us is regulatory reform. And so a big priority this last cycle was REINS, which stands for Regulations from the Executive in Need of Scrutiny. And we got really, really close this year with the Red Tape Rollback Act. Ultimately, it didn't get across the governor's desk, but we'll be strongly pursuing that again next year and hope to get it done next year. And then on the federal side, yes, we are prioritizing the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which is also known as the Trump tax cuts from 2025. And so we're focusing on holding Senator Ossoff accountable so he doesn't vote to increase taxes on hardworking Georgians. And so those tax cuts are actually set to expire at the end of 2025 if Congress doesn't extend it. And so, if it's not passed, it would essentially lead to the largest tax increase in American history. And so, we need to make sure it passes. Americans and Latinos especially can't afford a tax hike because I think this affects Latino families disproportionately. They often have more kids. They spend more money just to feed their family. And they open small businesses at higher rates. And so extending the TCJA would also really benefit the small business community.
Well, and the other part of it is, and I always say this to folks, is that they keep calling these the Trump tax cuts, but these are actually the rates we've been paying since 2018. So for the last 7 years, these are the rates. So for the average person, these are the rates they remember paying. Okay, I'm a little older. I'm 65, but my daughter's 33. She understands. I mean, the rates she's been paying basically her entire working life have been these rates. Okay, so if you don't extend them, it's not like another tax cut. If you don't extend them, then you're just going to have, like you said, a big tax hike, which nobody wants. I think for Georgia, the average is $2,300 a family that they will pay more in taxes. It's a fallacy to say that this is a tax cut to benefit the rich. This was a tax cut that benefited everybody who was paying federal income tax.
Absolutely. I mean, you're hitting all the nails on the head, and I talk about that all the time. Democrats like to say, oh, well, this is just, it's just going to help the rich. But the reality is the tax cuts may help the rich, but they have a much bigger impact on everybody else. And so that trickles down. And as you mentioned, these taxes could lead to an increase of around, the number that I have is around $2,500 per family. This tax policy helps small businesses be able to expand their business and create jobs within their community. So first and foremost, I view this as just, an economic package that's going to just stimulate and boost the economy.
Well, and in those second and third generations, there's such an opportunity because most of these young people are bilingual. And, it's funny, I took 5 years of Spanish in high school and college because my dad, everybody was taking French when I was coming through. And my dad goes, nope, the whole world's going to be speaking Spanish. You need to take Spanish. And so I took Spanish. And I have not spoken it as much as I should. So I'm a little rusty on the speaking part of it. But I can read and understand Spanish. And I was so thankful that I had a dad back in 1970 tell me, hey, don't take French. Not that many people are going to speak French. A lot more people are going to be speaking Spanish. So I'm really thankful for that. And, listen to your dad. That's a good message from that.
Absolutely. He was a visionary.
That's right. So you work in Hall County and Libre Initiative is growing. Tell us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I like to focus my work on the places in Georgia that have very high Latino populations, and Hall County, specifically Gainesville is one of those. We're going to be doing some work up in Whitfield. Dalton is over 50% Latino, and then also Gwinnett. Gwinnett County alone has over 220,000 Latinos. And so we have actually in Hall County right now some really, really motivated and enthusiastic ladies out knocking doors, talking to voters, asking Latinos what they care about, what their values are, and also asking them to hold Senator Ossoff accountable.
Amen
but
to that.
We do, yes. So we definitely are prioritizing that, and we do have a full-time position open right now. It's a grassroots engagement director position open in both Hall counties and Whitfield counties, where I'm looking. And you'll primarily be out interacting with the community on the ground, and helping connect them to some of the things that I mentioned earlier at the beginning of the interview. So, I'd just like to ask your listeners if they're interested in applying or know somebody who might be a good fit, who's, proficient in English and Spanish, to please reach out to me and get involved.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Senator Ossoff again because, I've gotten to know him pretty well, and we've had a good working relationship. I'm a conservative Republican. He's a Democrat. But my biggest concern about him, and I'm not saying anything publicly that I haven't told him, is that your campaign face and your official face are so far apart right now that it doesn't even look like you. And he is much more concerned with the caucus than the constituents, and he needs to vote the way his constituents want him to vote, not the way the caucus wants him to vote. And you know what? Quite frankly, I know how they play the game. He's got to get a lot of money from DSCC to be able to run this race, and he's got to toe the line with the caucus in order to do that. And I can't see him stepping out on a limb and voting the right way, but you can always hope.
Yeah, he tends to be a pretty strict party line voter, and so we're just hopeful that he thinks about his constituents. I mean, people these days vote their values and their pocketbooks, and the truth is, without these tax cuts, people are going to be hurting in an already struggling economy that we came off of the last 4 years from the disastrous Biden economy. So,
Stephanie Zanker, thank you so much for being with us today.
All right. Thank you very much, Martha. It was an honor.
It's local radio, and that's why you're listening. It's the Martha Zoller Show on AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN.
We are talking again to Reed Rasner. He was a former candidate for office in Wyoming. He's an investor and a businessman, and he's putting together a deal to buy TikTok. So I thought we'd check back in with him and see where all that's going and what he thinks about, the last 120 days of the Trump administration. Reed, how are you?
I'm doing good. The past 100 days of the Trump administration have been amazing. No complaints from me, I can tell you that.
So tell us about your TikTok deal and how that's going.
Sure. So we're 35 days out from the second deadline. President Trump extended it again. I think we're in a really good position. Of course, I thought that before. We've opened up dialogue with ByteDance. Again, they're willing to accept our offer. The administration, it sounds like they're willing to sign off on our offer. We're waiting for China, and they're really being a clog in the wheels of progress here. So China to allow ByteDance to sell that algorithm, and that's what we're waiting for. So for it to meet the regulatory guidelines, a few things have to happen, and one of them is it has to be a clean break of the American algorithm from China. And that's kind of the sticking point of the negotiations right now. So I hope we can get it done in the next 30 days. I'm eternally optimistic in all of my business dealings, and I don't see a need for another extension, but if we have to have one, President Trump will likely give one. But I think we can get this done. I'm willing to ink the deal. ByteDance is ready. President Trump is ready. We're all waiting on China, it sounds like.
So you're talking about bringing the operations if you get this deal to Wyoming. I don't know if you're old enough to remember the ad campaign that Wyoming had a number of years ago where they had these billboards all over the kind of Rust Belt called Why Wyoming, and it was trying to get people to move to Wyoming. And I always thought that was so smart because it's basically the same weather with a lot fewer people. It's great. But tell us about that plan.
Sure. So the entire thought process behind this was to make a technological footprint in these inner Midwest mountain states. So Wyoming, Colorado, Idaho, Montana, South Dakota, Governor Larry Roden has fully endorsed us. And we've been in talks with several other states throughout the Midwest. So we're talking about Iowa, Oklahoma, Missouri, Wisconsin. There's a lot of really great states. And when we look at the financial impact it has on these states, it'll truly create fourth legacy industries to stabilize these economies, break up that boom and bust cycle from energy, agriculture, and tourism that we rely on, and provide some stability for these families. So Why Wyoming is the perfect campaign for this. And, I do remember those ads, and one of the ads I put on Facebook is Why Reed Rasner. So I do remember those. So why Wyoming? Because Wyoming has an abundance of energy. We can power the entire TikTok operation for pennies on the dollar. We can have the data storage right here in Wyoming. We have the energy, the water to cool it, the infrastructure, and we're looking at other places too, like South Dakota for their quantum computing and their AI technologies, and also their data through facilities and capabilities with their energy with geothermal. There's so many great opportunities across these Midwest and inner mountain states that the footprint is going to be huge. And when we implement the financial end of this, it's going to be very massive.
So, of course, former Governor Doug Burgum, who's now the Energy Secretary or Interior Secretary, he, of course, was a visionary businessman who brought business to North Dakota that people didn't really expect. And when he sold his company to Microsoft, one of the parts of the deal was that, no, we're not going to move everything to Silicon Valley. We're going to spread the wealth around. And you're kind of that in that mold also. What was it about your upbringing that said, hey, we don't have to be in New York or L.A. or San Francisco or Miami. We can do this where we are?
Absolutely, and we have to do it where we are to affect what they call us flyover country, and we're not flyover country. We power the nation. Wyoming alone produces 15 times more energy than we consume. We are an energy leader. We have water. We have agriculture. We have the most friendly blockchain laws on the books, and Wyoming has passed the Wyoming stable token, the very first stable token to be used as a currency. So we're already leading the nation in fintech innovation. Wyoming is a great hub. South Dakota is an amazing place and visionary thought. North Dakota will be an amazing addition. I hope we can get through to them quickly in the next 30 days. Iowa, the financial impact to these communities is great. You're going to be able to keep your families and traditions alive and going. You're going to have high-paying careers and truly establishing that fourth legacy industry that lasts for generations to come.
And have you got another run for office in you, Reed?
Well, boy, I can tell you I am 100% focused on TikTok, and it consumes 28 hours of my day. And I wish there were 28 hours because I don't have enough time every day, it seems like. So I don't see a run in the future for me right now. I am 100% consumed and focused on TikTok and bringing this deal. I hope we get it. If we don't get it, we've raised over $50 billion as of today, and we can still make a really great impact doing something in the financial and technology space for these states.
We're talking to Reed Rasner. He is part of a group that's putting together financing to buy TikTok, and it's very exciting. And I serve also on the State Board of Education here in Georgia, and one of the things I'm really proud of is that we have put together something called CTAE, which is Career Technology Agriculture Education. And we are starting as young as fifth grade teaching construction basics, where it's mainly math, and so we're teaching that. And we're getting kids ready so that when they get into middle school and high school, that they can possibly choose a path of education that by the time they graduate from high school, they're ready for a high-tech job. So yeah. I'm pretty excited about that, and I hope we start doing that all across the country.
Oh, 100%. And I'll tell you what, kids are no longer going to be on TikTok. We're going to have a Kids Talk application. It'll be a separate side of the app that is completely STEM-focused. So what you're doing with CTA is already an amazing advancement, but children should not be exposed to the content that they're exposed to today. It should all be STEM-focused. They shouldn't be engaging with adults. And we really need to advance our society. So if we have visionaries and we have people out there leading, and we have people that want to change the world and better humanity, and this is the way to do it. This is the future, and Wyoming and America are leading the way.
Reed Rasner, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks, Martha. I appreciate it.
To hear the full versions of last week's Martha Zoller shows, go to the podcast page at accesswdun.com, and you can follow me on social media at Martha Zoller.